Fighting is not a substitute for faithfulness. Grace and peace, everybody. Welcome to Sabbath School Study Group. This is it, part 5, going back to Philippi. But we're looking at disunity in Philippi. And that's okay. We can look at their story, and that's the amazing thing about the Bible. You can look at other people's mess and other people's mistakes and use them as warning signs for what you don't want to do. Some of us, we grew up in great homes and we have family, have mothers and fathers that we admire and we respect. And then some of us didn't have that blessing. We may not be as connected to our parent as we should have been. But at least from that situation, I can say this is the kind of parent I don't want to be. And that's at least a positive that can come out of a very, very traumatic negative. Same thing with the Bible, that when we look at these situations and these negative aspects of ordinary people, hopefully it's a way for us to recognize that that is not who we want to be. And that's in fact not who Jesus saved us to be. And that's what we can see here in Philippians, where Paul is recognizing their disunity, a disunity where he is admonishing them, where clearly he's saying, look, y'all, don't let anything be done through strife or vainglory, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem others and other better than themselves. Even there in the church at Philippi, strife and vainglory. Please don't think that is something new. So I would even go so far as to say that we probably have it worse then than they did now, but there's nothing new under the sun. So it's just as bad. But how bad? Bad in that we have more ways to separate us or to distinguish us to fuel strife or vainglory. In our prosperity, with the money that we have, and at the same time, the money that others don't have. That's one way to cause strife. We let things like the measure or the amounts of education that someone has. And the reason why I bring this one up, because it bothers me when so many people are choosing to further their education, not really to know more, but to be more. Now, there's nothing wrong with education. I mean, I went to school. If you're watching this at some level, you probably went to school. But I'm talking about going to school for the sake of glory, and not necessarily for the good, not necessarily to serve someone else, but instead to serve myself. When I take that route, albeit good, but for that reason, I will ultimately get to a place where I think I'm above or better, and so above or better that I remove myself from my capacity or my ability to serve or to help that person because I think I'm better than them. That's not what ministry is about, because that's not how God treats us. And this is what was happening in Philippi, and it's really what is happening a lot now. So when we read on where he says, some of you indeed are preaching Jesus, but you're even preaching Christ, even of envy and strife, and some also of goodwill. There again, some doing it for the right reason, some doing the right thing, but for the wrong reason. The one preached Christ of contention, not sincerely, supposing to add affliction to my bonds. Paul's saying this is putting a burden on top of my burden. And that is that we've got people preaching Jesus, but now we're actually preaching Jesus for ourselves. We even preach Christ to fight. Fighting is not a substitute for faithfulness. Fighting in church or fighting about church is one of the greatest manifestations of the work of the enemy. And I get so tired of people talking about the devil is busy. We're not about that in this space. God is busier, okay? But recognizing that when we see this kind of activity going on, especially with people or with a family who's claiming to serve God, it's the devil, y'all. It is the devil's work to get us to fight each other, civil war, while in the midst of a real war. This is the work of Satan, not of a savior. And so when we're thinking about preaching that leads to fighting or teaching that leads to contention, we have to ask ourselves, are we falling into this fake activity where instead we should be working in faith activity? And a lot of times we can mistake the fighting. It's like, I'm fighting the fight of faith. I must be doing something right because I'm always knocking someone upside their head and someone's always trying to cut me out from my knees. That's fighting. We're talking about being faithful first and not enjoying going at it with other people because we think that that's what God's asked us to do. I hope this is hitting the nail on the head, because when you go to Proverbs 13, verse 10, one of the things that drives us to have this kind of mindset, only by pride cometh contention. Man, that's a word right there. Only by pride cometh contention, but with the well-advised is wisdom. And there is wisdom in choosing faithfulness over fighting. It takes two to tango. And sometimes the best thing we can do with dealing with a conflict is to avoid it. If someone's looking for a fight, let them have it with somebody else. I've not been called, and we have not been called to fight for God. He's able to fight for himself. Jesus clearly illustrates that. But when it comes to being faithful, we are willing to be faithful no matter what anybody says. I will stand on what God has told me no matter what that costs. That mindset of being faithful is willing to take the hit on the chin. It's willing to take the assault or the harassment. It's willing to take, even like Jesus, and by his spirit, and because I love him, is even willing to go to the death, because nothing will change the truth that has changed my life. And that is something we can hold on to. If we're willing to stand on that truth, if we're willing to stand in that faith, oh man, if that's the kind of faith you have, nothing can stand against you. Nothing can overcome you. And again, when we talk about overcoming, we're talking about nobody can pluck my soul from the one whom I'm standing with. I'm saved. I'm sealed. I'm good with God, because in him, because it's by him, he's the only way that we'll be able to stand in the first place. That's the battle we need to be fighting, the fight of faith and not the fight of contention. So I pray that this study has encouraged us to stand our ground, and that ground is holy ground. And it's to stand on what Jesus has done for you and what he's done in you. Nobody can argue that. If you put your mind on the mission of letting God work in your life and overcome, nobody can argue where and who you've become.